Welcome to week 3 of It's Complicated Behind the Scenes, where we get to interview speaking pastor and just kind of get a little bit of their heartbeat of what went into the message and just even a little bit more of what we didn't get to hear from the message. So we're here with David. David, thank you for joining us tonight.
Welcome. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So question to start off, because I feel like those flowers on the 10th, for I think you said it was a year or maybe more, that's golden. We're going to assume that was all you. We're going to assume that was your idea. And you're just that suave. So,
I think that's good to assume that.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us then, all right, because you said there was a lot of competition. You referred to them as wimpy. So
very wimpy, yeah.
We can't fact check that. So again, we're going to assume that's true.
Yeah.
But maybe tell us one or two other things you did to try to rise above the competition that year as you pursued Ruth. So flowers on the 10th, great touch. What else?
You know, because we were in college and we were both living in dorms, and we would ended up eating meals together in the dorm all the time. And we were together for the first several months all the time. And so it's amazing how fast in that environment a relationship can accelerate, because it's not like we were going on a date once a week or something like even twice a week. It was 7 days a week. And from the morning we were awake till we said goodnight to each other and went back to our rooms. And so it just accelerated fast. So I think I dominated just by lots of attention and monopolized the time. So right. They couldn't get into the schedule anymore. So
that's a great strategy. So again, when we're pursuing, we put ourselves in that place where we're going to be there all the time.
Dominate. Don't let anybody else have a foothold
awesome.
at all.
Love that. So if you're in college right now, particularly, that's just good advice. For
exactly. Very good advice. Yeah.
So I loved all 7 of those. You know, we talked about, secrets to having just a great marriage or thriving relationship. I think they're all brilliant, and I think they're all needed. Each one of them, they don't stand on their own. But I'm curious, in your mind, is there one that's a little bit more foundational than the rest? So think of it like a keystone habit. And for those of you who are watching in groups, a keystone habit's really just this idea. It's a foundational behavior that leads to other healthy habits or choices. And so does any one of those kind of build off the rest? So
Jason, it's going to feel like I'm giving the pat answer as the pastor. Number 7, a tapping into the power of Jesus, is really the foundational one. And I do it as well. So I'm not saying everybody does it but me, but we so often go it alone and we try to figure it out on our own and even just power our way through some of these things. And we fail miserably, and then we're disappointed and we're frustrated. And to think that we actually have Jesus inside us with his supernatural power that we could just rely on to do so many of these things, it would just revolutionize, I think, our relationships and our marriages if we would actually do that. But we tend not to. We tend to try to do it on our own. And sometimes last resort, I'm in so much trouble now, I'll ask Jesus to help me. It's like, man, why not do it right from the get-go and right off the bat?
Yeah, no, I love that. I don't think it's a bad answer, because I think the temptation when we see a list like that is, cool, what one do I want to focus on now?
Yeah.
And it's like, I might be good at that one, so I'm going to choose it. But really, if we say, hey, tap into God, he's going to change your heart, transform you to be able to live out these other things.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
It's not just a to-do list, but really it is a lifestyle, and again, developing habits. And so that first habit is, pursue that relationship with God, because that's going to set you and your other relationships up for success.
Yeah, exactly. And then the others, if you think about them, they're all pretty well, there's similarities to all of them. I mean, it's give attention, it's listening, it's showing interest and affection. I mean, all of those are kind of tied together. Mm-hmm. And so we joked about, you kind of said, what was my strategy that first couple of months to win over the competition? And it's just, in some ways, undivided attention and all your focus and all your energy. And so we do that when we're pursuing a relationship oftentimes. But once we win, especially as men, then it's like, okay, I've conquered that. Now I move on to the next thing. And what do I need to conquer next? And if we can get out of that mindset and say, I've got to keep conquering every day, and conquer may be the wrong word, but I've got to keep winning her heart every day, then all of a sudden that changes the strategy somewhat. So
yeah, no, I love that. That was going to actually be one of my questions. And I think you said it exactly how I'd say it. And it sounds a little crass, but as men, we want to conquer. We want to win.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, hey, when we win, when we get that relationship, when it ends in marriage, we think, hey, this is the finish line.
Yeah.
But really, it's just the starting line.
Definitely.
And so why do you think, especially as men, I mean, you alluded to this idea that we're conquerors and, we want to move on to the next thing. But what are some ways we could fight against that?
So it's not, if you take the mindset that to win her heart and to pay attention to her interest, it's actually the opposite of conquering when you think about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we use those techniques to conquer, but then if you want to maintain the relationship, then you almost develop a lifestyle of, okay, I'm going to put you first. I'm going to focus on your interests first. And so it almost flips from not what you would expect a conqueror to be. And all of a sudden you become the person that is wooing, pursuing all the time. And so it's almost the exact opposite of what you'd think. And again, it's so, in some ways it's like, duh, what else would you do? And yet we get so wrapped up in ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I say all the time when Ruth and I have arguments, I know how to solve the argument almost instantly if I would just not try to win, because again, we talk about conquering, right, and I always want to win the argument. And so winning never ends up in a good situation. And I know if I will just put aside my stubbornness, go over, give her a hug and tell her I love her, instantly the situation will be diffused and we're fine. But I don't do that all the time. Because I want to win, then I'll hang on much longer than I need to.
Sometimes you dig the heels in.
Yeah. And so then you have this tense moment or tense hours that you didn't need to have, but you had it just because of your own stupidity or stubbornness, my own stupidity or stubbornness, which I get wrapped up into often. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think you talked a lot about those. A lot of those habits really, again, build off that idea of date your spouse.
Yeah.
Continue to pursue, because it is a lifelong relationship, and you're constantly fighting for her heart.
Right.
And so again, I'm sure that some women struggle with that, but I think by and large, if we're honest, that tends to be the man who kind of checks out and stops that pursuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, tell me this, because you talked about one of the other things being, pursue adventure together. And I'd love to hear maybe what that's looked like at different seasons of your life with Ruth, because I know for me, I'm a father of young children. And so, adventure looks a little different these days. Just getting out of the house is an adventure. But then, in your stage of life, again, kids are grown, they're married. And so how does that kind of shift and change throughout?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. When our kids were getting older and closer to high school and then ready to move on to college, a lot of our friends, we would hear people say, oh, it's going to be so hard and so sad. And there is a sadness to it, but there's also kind of a celebration to it. Like, yes, now we can focus on each other again. And so our stage of life now, and once the kids moved out, is we'd love to travel. And so whenever whether it's business, Ruth always goes with me. I don't ever travel alone. And so we just love being together that way. But then we also look for other opportunities. And it doesn't have to be long. I mean, when we first moved to Pennsylvania, I loved to get away just for a night. And so Ruth would go to a place called Peddler's Village, which is out towards Philly, actually towards the Branch Creek campus. And we would go there and spend the night, have dinner and breakfast, and then come back. And we did that probably for 15 years on our anniversary, so February 10th for years. And but it's just looking for those special kind of things that you can do over and over, repetition for me. Some of you like adventure, and I've got friends that they would never do the same thing twice, and that's okay. But it's the idea of just do something to break the routine. And that's maybe the key, is breaking the routine and doing something that's abnormal to your schedule, I think is what's key.
Yeah, that's a good word. And again, it looks different for everybody. So maybe you want to do something different every year, maybe on the same day, same place, because you're going to commit to it. But make it a priority to just get out of the daily routine. And it's so easy. Like you said, I think at the start of the message, with relationships, it's just hard. We see each other at those stressful times of days, in the morning, at the end of the day when we're kind of tense. And so getting outside of those environments will really just kind of help break that mold and help you reconnect quicker.
And for us, we were able to communicate throughout the day, and we've been able to do that for a long, long time. And so it's just a quick text, a quick phone call to say, here, how are you doing? What's going on? Touching base real quick that way has been great. So that's one of the nice things with cell phones and things like that we can do that now that maybe we couldn't before. And so it's the annual kind of events, but it's also when the kids were younger, it was doing that as a family. But then it's also saying, okay, how can we pull back and make sure you get a sitter? And so on a weekly basis, we were always going out and planning a weekly date that way. And I always tell her that I'd love for her to get dressed up and go out. And so let's, dress you up and take you out. And I just love those kind of things. And so we do that a lot and did that a lot all the way through, even when the kids were younger. And you can find ways to swap babysitters with other people or share.
Get creative about it. I love that. And I think in some ways, and again, you could attest to this, I can't yet, but because of that constant investment over time, now that's just almost second nature to you guys. And
so,
even when the kids are gone, it's not like some of those people find themselves like, oh no, the kids are gone, what are we going to talk about?
Exactly.
It's like, no, we have a great relationship because we've developed it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's key to keep that strong and important and not let the kids dominate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the challenge that you really put out. It's that you're either growing closer together or you're moving further apart. Exactly. There really is no stagnation. And so that's just a good challenge to each of us. Are we pursuing our partners in a way where we're really growing closer together?
And Jason, I think that happens. That's a daily thing, and that's almost an hour by hour thing. And it's amazing where you want to kind of let down and take a breath and and pause. But it's amazing how it doesn't take long to let down, and all of a sudden you're pulling apart because, again, you are moving this way or this way, and you take that little break. And sometimes I'll tell Ruth, it's amazing how we go to bed the night before and think we're as close as we could ever be, and then something happens during the night and in the morning, and it just feels like we pulled apart and we're at each other. And so it's work, but it's worth the work and the effort. So
that's a good one.
And I think that's the biggest misnomer, Jason, is we tend to think it's not work, and it should just happen naturally.
Right, love should just be easy is the idea that we buy into.
Exactly, but it takes work.
Yeah, that's good. And so let's talk about that idea, the work that it takes, because one of the things that you said that I love, I'm not going to quote you exactly, but it's that idea that you don't need a new partner or a new spouse, you need a new attitude.
Yeah.
And so really, how does a new attitude renew our relationships? Because I think, again, in a lot of relationships, we just hit a wall.
Yeah.
And we're like, great, it's obviously the other person, and I just need to bail.
Yeah.
And so how does reworking our attitude really give us essentially a new relationship?
So it almost goes back again to those 7 things and saying, what did we do? What did you do when you first started pursuing your spouse? And when you were first getting to know each other, it was all about her, not about me. And so it's getting back to that, because somewhere along the way we flipped it and we started thinking, okay, what can she do for me? What can you do to take care of what I want? When do I get to win? When do I get to do the things I want to do? Somewhere it flipped, because when we were dating, that was never even a factor. It was like, I'll do whatever you want to do. As much as I may even hate it, I'll do it just because I want to be with you. And somewhere along the way that begins to shift. And so the new attitude is saying, okay, let's go back to, I'll focus on you, and let's go from there.
That's good. And so just one final question. And so I want you to speak to those who are on the edge right now saying like, hey, I don't know that we could continue on. Like we're just at our wits' end. We're ready to throw in the towel. Or maybe you're not there, but you have friends or family members that are there. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, don't give up. It is possible to work through it. And I know that firsthand because of, one, both in our marriage, but also in being with lots and lots of other couples that have worked through it. Keep that commitment, say we're going to work through this. Don't try to do it alone. Get other people around you. And it could be friends, but it could be that your friends may not always give the best advice. And so be careful the advice you listen to. You may have friends that are saying bail out, and that just feeds that sense of why do I need to commit? But man, there are professional counselors, and we would love to give you names of people that we think are great at helping with marriages that way. It's worth the effort. What I always say, Jason, is the marriage you're in right now has the potential to be better than any other marriage you could have. And so why not tap out all of that potential as opposed to moving on? Because if you move on, you're going to take all that baggage with you into a new relationship. And so you're starting not clean, and you think, oh, I'm going to just go and start clean, and they're going to come into this relationship clean. You're going to have all kinds of baggage. They're going to have all kinds of baggage. It's going to make it all that much harder for that marriage to succeed. So man, put the effort into this one and watch this one succeed, and watch what God can do. And God says he can do more than you would ever dream or imagine. So let him do that. Put God to the test and let him do that.
I love that. David, thank you so much for your time today. And groups, as you go and have this discussion, again, remember, it's worth the work, and the relationship you have now is worth pursuing. So don't give up, put in the work, and experience a remarkable relationship with your spouse. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.